reason why I did this and what I do is help leaders to become brands and brand themselves. You train people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. I teach authenticity marketing. If people can take advantage of you, they will in your personal or professional existence.
My biggest takeaway just from day one is you are the brand. I would recommend it to anybody that's really looking to build a personal brand.
Just the brand in general has changed my life. I've grown so much since I've been a part of this.
I see myself in what he does, and I believe in it just as much as I believe in myself.
All right, welcome, guys. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland industry leading brand. If you are now tuned in live, you already know what to do. Three things. Number one, put some flames in the chat. Number two, let us know where you're listening in from. And also, just like and share this. So you know what we do. If the content has been phenomenal, if you've been with us for quite some time and you're enjoying the content, you definitely want to hit that share button. I have with me today Mr. Shan Ra'is, the king of branding himself. Shan, I definitely want to invite you on. Let's get started. I'm super excited today, brother.
All right. Likewise. No complaints whatsoever. I hope everybody is ready for something that is going to be absolutely transformative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your background looks a little different.
Well, I was going to say the same thing about you. I am
Yeah.
actually in Denver. Sometimes I have to wonder what state I'm in, right? Because we're moving around so much that I promise you, I'll forget. I have to think about it. So I'm in Denver, Colorado, speaking on Sunday at the, I won't give the location yet. It's a phenomenal gathering of phenomenal leaders. However, I'm like a sneaky keynote. So nobody really knows I'm speaking at this event besides the organizer. So yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
A
interesting.
sneaky keynote.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. What's a sneaky
Well,
keynote, Shan?
a sneaky keynote is when people bring you in at the last moment to surprise everybody there. So just wait for it. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. Interesting. So I do want to send a quick good morning to everybody listening in. Guys, don't be shy. If you're listening in, put it in the chat. Where are you listening in from? I see we have Tamika and we have Jackie tuning in. We have some people joining from LinkedIn. We have YouTube as well. All right, guys. So definitely keep the comments coming. By the way, this is your show. So if you have a question at any point in time, please feel free to put the question down below. Before we sort of get into the question part today, Shan, to sort of pre-frame everyone, we had a phenomenal clubhouse last night.
We did.
It was super. It was something else. There was a lot of live coaching going on, guys. So if you missed the clubhouse, then you definitely missed out.
Whew. Yeah. Yeah, if you missed it, you missed it. We did well, I did kind of like a what we call a strategic intervention, which doesn't take long at all. Maybe 15 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes to find out the problem, 5 minutes to search for coachability. So 5 minutes discovery, 5 minutes coachability, sensitivity, kind of like an emotive sensory perception, and then 5 minute solution breakthrough, 15 minutes or less.
That's right. 15-minute breakthrough, right?
That's right.
Yes, sir. You know, today we are due for a break in 60 seconds, but
Okay.
before we go for that, I do want to sort of pre-frame everybody, let them know what we'll be talking about today. Guys, we're going to continue with the conversation on sales. Like, listen, I know we have so many business owners looking. If you're in business, sales should be at the top of your mind. Sales should be at the top of your mind if you're in business, because I mean, you want to do the hard work, right, Chan? Everybody wants to do the hard work. Everybody wants to serve, but we also have to do the head work as entrepreneurs. So we're definitely going to get into that. We'll be talking a lot about the inner game,
Yes, I
the
was
inner
gonna
game of sales.
I was gonna say I might have a different spin on that for today. So we're gonna
Definitely.
really get to the heart of the sales matter. Watch this. Take us to the break, Mr. B.
I'm Jackie Miller, and I was really drawn to Sean's personality from the moment that I did the Branding Like a Leader challenge. This was the free challenge that he offered. And I'm so glad that he offered it because I joined the class and I was blown away. First of all, by his giving personality. For me, it was the personality that really drew me in. But then as he was sharing his wealth of knowledge, I realized that there was so much that I didn't know. I already knew there was a lot I didn't know, but there was so much that I didn't know. And he was just freely giving this information. It was evident that he really wanted to help people. And as somebody who likes to help people, that I connected with that. And then I was able to connect not only with Sean, but then with his team, with Junior and with Jason, Mr. B, and just the entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond. One day, something had come up, and Junior he texted me just to see how I was doing, and that really touched my heart. So that relational piece is there. So if you were having any doubts about what Mr. Sean Wright East and his team with the brand can offer you, let me let you know. It is a treat and it is a joy, and you will not be disappointed.
Who are your 3 top competitors? That's a real question. Who are your 3 top competitors? Promise you, they're not who you think they are. They're probably somebody that you like and love. That's cool. It's good. Dig into what they do. When you change you, when you put you into the equation, the whole system is different. The very top earners, I don't care what their denomination is, what their religion is, what their culture is, what their demographic is. They making your money. Some people on TikTok, I said man, woman, or child. There's 8-year billionaires on TikTok. See what they doing and duplicate the model.
All right, guys, welcome back. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry leading brand. If you are now tuned in live, definitely put your flames in the chat. Let us know where you're listening in from. Today, we're going to be talking about the inner game of sales. So, Shan, let's get started. Let's dive into that because I'm super curious. What you have to say about this.
All right, so give me a moment. Just let me say good morning to everybody here. A lot of times when it comes to sales, we think about tactic or what. What do I do? How? And I promise you, it's not a tactical question. It's not a what, it's a who. And most people are looking for a what solution to a who question.
Interesting. So you're saying tactical tactics meaning, let's say something like prospecting, let's say something like I guess getting on the phone, um cold calling, right?
That's tactical.
Right.
That's tactical. The strategy, the long game strategy is who are you? Are you a closer? Is this what you do? Are you a top salesperson? Are you a closer? That's the main thing. Are you a rainmaker? Do you make it rain? See, I've been a rainmaker for a long time across multiple industries. So there's never a question of can I sell or prospect or negotiate or overcome objections. All of those things are tactics. They're a skill set that come with the identity.
Right. So let's dive deeper into that. So when you say are you a rainmaker, can you sort of unpack that? Because what I'm hearing you say, in fact I'll let you tell it. But yeah, let's unpack that for a while.
What is
Because
your
people,
identity?
right.
What is your identity? That's where you need to start. We create our identity as we go. We create, recreate, abbreviate, initiate, substantiate, and everything else. Like it's on us to create that, recreate that, disrupt that. So some people have, okay, so look, let's think of a mother, someone who has a child and they stop working. They change their identity from an accountant, let's say, or a lawyer. That's their identity for maybe 5 years. And then they shut that down and move into mother mode. Now they're a mother. That's their identity, primary. So primary, secondary, and tertiary. Everybody has these different. So we think in threes, guys. Everybody thinks in threes: primary, secondary, and tertiary. What is your primary, secondary, and tertiary identity? And if Rainmaker isn't there, you're going to have a problem with sales. I don't care what tactics you learn. If you're not a
So
closer, if you do not identify as a closer, then you're going to have a problem with sales, a big one.
interesting. So guys, put a number one in the chat if you understand exactly what Shan means when he says that. Um, and the identity, that is one of the most difficult things I've realized for most people. Um, and I can speak for myself too. Before I sort of got into, I guess, professional sales, it was really was pretty interesting, pretty interesting. Everybody, well, people who have been looking at the podcast, they sort of know where I come from. So for those of you who don't know, just a young man from an island called Saint Lucia, eastern part of the Caribbean. So dealing with a lot of people from your area, there was a huge identity shift that had to sort of take place. I'm sure you could imagine. Um, but let's sort of dive into that. How does one begin to shift their identity? So somebody who
Look at the water
has
here.
never seen themselves as a closer.
Even the water is branded here. Phenomenal hotel. But go ahead. So what was the question again?
The question was, how does one begin to shift their identity? So I've met so many people that say to me, I'm not a salesperson. I don't do sales.
Yep.
How does one begin to shift? Because some things, like, there are different things that go into identity, right? Perspective, etc., etc. So how does one begin to shift that identity?
It starts with the decision. It starts with the decision, and then you rebuild the discipline, and then you learn the tactical. So again, we think in threes: decision, discipline, and then tactical. Make a decision. This is what I'm going to do. A decision with resolve. People say all the time, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It doesn't work. And that's why they find themselves back to square one. The identity shifts. So, okay, so let me give you an example. Playboy. Playboy gets married. Playboy thinks he falls in love and he finds someone that he's really enamored with. He appreciates her personality. He says, I'm going to get married. However, he still hangs out with the same Playboy circle. He still goes to the clubs. He still prides himself on being attractive, fast, a magnet for attention. He hasn't left the identity. He still identifies as a playboy. So his success at being a phenomenal, loyal, dedicated husband is going to be very, very questionable because he has yet to change the identity. If he makes the decision to say, I'm going to be a, not get married, you see, this is the gap. I am going to be a, I am going to become, and then say I am. That's why we did the closer's creed, so that people could embed it in their mind, embed it in their physiology, and become, as opposed to I'm going to get married. Let me say this too. Most people see getting something as something you can unget, right? So when you say I am a husband, there's so many different things that go into that. And the option of divorce is just not one of them. It's just not one of them. It's not an option. It's an option when you say, I got married, because then you can unget married. But if you identify as a husband, then you have to make the disciplines that go along with the decision. It doesn't make a difference how old you are. It doesn't make a difference whether you grew up in a single parent household. It doesn't make a difference if you never saw the example. You begin to attract the skill sets to you. You begin to notice around your environment the opportunities to become better at what you are, not what you do. So it's almost the same thing as being branding who you are as opposed to what you do. Getting married is something that you do. Being a husband is something that you are. Making sales is something that you do. Being a closer is someone that you are. If you do sales, but you are not a closer, you will not make sales for long.
Very good point. Um, while you were speaking, something came to mind, and that was the power of questions.
Good.
Asking yourself the right questions
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the identity shift. I'll give you one example. One example of a question would be, what do I need to do? And this is actually a question that I ask myself. I used to ask myself, what do I need to do?
Yep.
Right? So the doing is the activity. But then I started to ask myself two very different questions, which is, number one, who do I need to be, or who do I need to become? And number two, what do I need to create?
Mm.
And I think maybe subconsciously we do it, but I think a lot of the shift in identity comes from asking yourself a new set of questions. It comes from a shift in the language. So you notice the way that you said that being a husband is not something that you do. Being a husband is something that you are. So how important is it to be mindful of our language when making that identity shift?
Language is everything. Language, if you notice the nuances, the words are small, but they mean everything. So words like do, two letters. Words like are, words like am, words like I. Those small things, who, three-letter questions, three-letter words. Etymology is serious. The study of the science of language is everything, man. Because if you say the right thing the wrong way, you'll be in Texas, but you were supposed to be in Miami.
That's funny.
No, it's a
Yeah,
fact. It's a fact.
right,
And this is why people are upside down in their business when they're supposed to be right side up. Because they're
right.
upside down in their identity when they're supposed to be right side up. It's so it's so subtle. It's almost unnoticeable. It's almost unnoticeable. But when you think of a plane, and I'm gonna use a plane as an example. If a plane is going from Baltimore to Washington, D.C., however, it deviates just a hair, not a huge deviation, not a standard deviation, not zero point 0.5, just a micromillimeter off. Instead of being in Washington, D.C., they'll be in New Jersey.
Interesting. Which sort of leads me to my next question, right? So the next question is, what is the when you talk about language, right? When you go into the language sort of pattern, how much of that is actually unconscious? Because if I'm a closer, I don't realize that I'm closing. If you know what I mean. To me, I'm just living life. I'm just, just doing my thing, just going about it as
Ah,
usual.
I'm so glad you asked that question. So I want you
Right.
to think about the 80-20 rule. We discussed it last night. Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. 20% of results come from 80% of the work when you're working crazy hard, right? But then 80% of the right results come from 20%. So huge, huge shifts, reality shifts are made from small tweaks and pops. Just think about that. Huge, huge, huge changes are made from small things, small decisions, small disciplines.
Right. But what I'm asking is how much of that is actually unconscious? Because remember, we're talking about helping someone to shift. Now, in order for you to shift your mindset, you have to be conscious of it, right? So you
Okay.
have to be conscious of the shift. But somebody who has already made the shift, like if I'm closing, then I may be talking to somebody, just having a conversation, and I'm closing them. But if I'm a closer, right, then I don't even notice it. Whereas the person who hasn't made the shift, they're still consciously trying to perform the activity instead of unconsciously being the
Have you ever
person.
heard? I don't know if you've ever heard to try means to fail.
Yes,
Okay, great. When you're trying to roll the rock up the hill, it's like Dante's Inferno. It's just going to roll back down. It's not a do situation, it's a who situation. So all of it has to do with conscious and subconscious. Have you ever heard of the unconsciously competent? That was me. Let me explain this, and I hope everybody can bear witness and or at least to the testimony. I was unconsciously competent in so many areas. Junior, I was, I'm a kid from Harlem who God chose to show his favor and mercy through, grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. You know what happened in that time, and you know what I was a part of. I was a part of that culture. I was rapping, I was in the streets, I was at the basketball games, I was at the Rucker, being in Harlem, right? We went to Dapper Dan, being in Harlem, we cut school. We didn't even have no use for school. However, I developed certain competencies. that I was largely unaware of. I was a hustler, a grinder. I raised my children, on the grind, literally and figuratively. I suffered a lot of penalizations from this, but during that time, the survival skills and the mechanisms that I had were so vast and I was so unaware. I discounted my value. I did not understand how powerful the things that I had learned were. But when I chose to go to school, when I fell in love and I said, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to just, I had been dropped out of school. I had a GED. I said, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give education a shot. I'm going to go back to college. Guys, I promise you, I didn't have to try hard. I didn't have to try hard at all. I was scared that I wasn't going to make the cut. I was fearful that I was not going to be successful in college. I promise you. For me, it was a throw the dice against the wall, hope something sticks, see what happens, kind of like a last move shot. So I've got this woman loves me, I love her. I'm going to try my best to become someone else, something I've never seen, something I definitely have never pictured myself as being: a scholar, a leader, a student, none of those things. But I said, let me just give it a shot. God be with me. And I enrolled. And after I enrolled, first thing, guys, I hope you're writing this down. I enrolled. After I enrolled, I engaged. I became a part of something. I signed up for it. Number two, I was committed to it. How many people enroll in something, sign up for something, and don't attend the meetings, don't go to the calls, don't turn in their homework, don't get a TA, don't speak to the coaches, don't do that. What I did was I enrolled and then I engaged. And then I gave it another E, Junior. And this is probably the deciding moment. I enrolled, I engaged, people enrolled, other people engaged, but for the wrong reasons. I put forth the effort. And what happened was, I can remember my academic advisor, the first one that I had, thinking her name was Denise. We did this online, but I could almost see her by the way she was speaking to me. I spoke to her a long time. She was Hispanic, and we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. She followed me for about 2 years while I was in college. I wrote my introductory letter. An introductory letter is just that, an introductory letter, a little bit about your story. When she read my story, she said, oh, Sean, wow. And she's reading the story and it's just hitting her. She's like, oh my God, I'm telling my truth. My father died of AIDS when I was 18, coming home from getting in trouble. He died while I was in prison. Do you understand? I was in some juvenile delinquency camp and lost my father there. And I'm telling the story and she's just like, oh my God. Oh, Sean. And this story was probably 4 pages because I put forth the effort. I didn't know it was supposed to be 3 paragraphs. So I turned in 3 pages. I didn't know it was supposed to be 3 paragraphs or whatever. I put in 3 pages. And she's just like, oh my gosh, Sean. Yeah, you were made for this. This is going to be so transformative for you. I told her my story. I told her where I grew up. I told her what my educational background was, what my environment looked like, how many people I lost in the streets. I'm telling her the truth. I'm telling her I got married. I'm telling her I love my wife, so I'm here to give it my all and give it my the last hurrah, the last soldier stand. And she was like, at the end of it, she was crying. And she said, I never thought, she said, this is why I do what I do, because I pray that I get to meet and help people like you. I was unconsciously competent. When I got into school, in my entire 10 years in college, guys, and I hope I'm not boring anybody with my story, but it's my truth, and it is yours too. I hope you're taking the transferable pieces and applying it to what you think you can't do and who you think you're not. I'm telling you who you really are. In my entire 10 years of college, haven't written a paper in 20 years, didn't know APA from anything. What for me, an APA was like APB. I knew all points bulletin. I didn't know APA. Anyway, the people who have been to college know what I'm talking about. In the past 10 years, Junior, in college, I've gotten 3 Bs. Everything else has been straight A's. I have never, ever failed in this space. If I apply my mind to learning statistics, and I mean college level statistics, my mind is able to embrace it because I'm from the street. So I always had to adapt and learn fast, because if I didn't, my life was on the line. So I have a certain way of looking at things and learning them quickly. Do you understand? And another thing, what I learned where I come from is that everything is life and death. Like, I take things super seriously because there's super serious consequences where I come from. So everything is super serious. And I've faced harsh consequences. And there were always harsh consequences where I come from. You either live or you die, right? So when it comes to picking up the phone and making a call, it's like, that's nothing. That's not painful. When someone says no to me, that's not painful for me. When someone drops out, that's not painful for me. Creating curriculum and coming up with things are not painful for me. It's easy for me because I've taken on the identity. But, Junior, to your point, it was largely unconscious. I did not know it until I went to college and they began to say and equate and notice and then give labels to these different competencies. So what I'm saying, guys, the critical part that I'm giving you is that you have competencies that are unconscious that you don't even know exist. You don't even know exist. You're watching this now because there's something bigger meant for you, and you're here for a reason, but you doubt yourself. And until you enroll, engage, and put forth the effort, you will forever be wandering aimlessly, like I was.
On that note, Mr. B, when you're ready, let's go to a break. We need a break.
Five W framework. If you want to take your money to the next level, you got to reevaluate some things. It's not doing something different. It's doing something better. So the first W, who? Simple. Who do you do what you do for? What do you really do? Where do you do it? When do you do it for your ideal client in their lifetime? For God's sakes, why do you do what you do, man? 5 pens less than $10. 1 pen almost $2,000. When people come to me, I always say, what is your number? And when they say 500, I say, let's put a 0 behind it and then figure out the packaging, figure out the presentation, figure out the place where you're going to present it, and figure out the people that you're going to give it to. Because I guarantee you, you got the right thing. You are the right person. But in those 5 P's, brother, presentation, packaging, place, people, price. They will pay the price because they have paid the price and they are paying the price. Now the question is, are you getting the price?
All right, guys, welcome back. This is Breakfast with the Brand. If you've enjoyed the show so far, I want you to put a number one in the chat. So put a number one in the chat wherever you're listening in from, whether that be LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, IG, wherever that you're viewing this recording. Please put a number one if you've enjoyed the content so far. We do have some more phenomenal points for you. Now, Shan, that was super, super powerful. Now I'm listening into what you're saying, right? So you said a lot there, and I'm listening into what you're saying. And one thing, in fact, one of many things that sort of stood out to me was when you said that this was easy, like picking up the phone, making a call to someone, to a prospect, or just to somebody that you know, right?
Oh,
Any kind of scenario,
let me give you a little bit of background on
right?
that. Right? Again, guys, I'm from the hood, right? So and I give this analogy all the time. And this is one of the many things that we used to do to make money, to live, to eat, to feed our children. We used to go down to 23rd Street and get shirts or hats or shoes or whatever it was that we bought. We might get it for $23, come back uptown, sell it for 50, come back uptown, sell it for 80. Right? And when I say sell it, I mean sell it. We literally had to be able to take $5 and make it 50, put a zero behind it, outside of formal parameters, without permission, without permission. And we had to be able to speak to people and say, hey, and stop people while they were walking by. Stop strangers, talk to strangers while they were walking by and say, hey, as a kid, as a 14-year-old, like, Miss Ma'am, would you like to see some purses we have? Or gentlemen, excuse me. Hey, bruh, sir, we have some phenomenal shirts. We have some phenomenal hats. We have some phenomenal things to barter. So you had to have an eye for these things, and you had to have an eye for people, and you had to be able to speak to people. You couldn't be scared to talk to people. You couldn't live if you were scared. If you couldn't sell or speak, you couldn't eat. You couldn't eat. Now think about that. This is what people don't understand. This is why they're messed up, because they had something I didn't have. I didn't have a job. I didn't have the education at a time. I didn't have the skill set to go get a job. I didn't know what going to get a job was. I knew what waking up in the morning was and feeding my family was. That's what I knew. And I knew in order to get that, there had to be a rate of exchange for value. There had to be something of value that I was able to give to someone. That was it. Very simple. And people don't get that part. They've got what they consider to be comfortability in a job or in something that they can do just in case things don't go right. And that's why they always default to never realizing their full potential, because it's not easy getting started. It's stressful getting started. It's uncomfortable getting started. It's like a slingshot. When you pull it back, it causes stress. And because it causes stress, people don't realize on the other side of the stress is a breakthrough. They don't realize that. They stop. They're like, oh, I'm going to break. You're right. You're going to break, but you're going to break the old you and replace it with a better you. And you're going to break through into a completely different reality where you're traveling the world. You're speaking on stages. You're closing big deals. And it's easy for you. But it's hard at first. And because people aren't disciplined, remember I said decision, then discipline. People don't have the discipline to get over that hump. They don't have the internal fortitude. They don't have the grit. They don't have the resilience. They don't have the drive. Realistically, and this is hard, so some people might take it some kind of way, and it's okay if you do. They're not doing it for a who. They're doing it for a what. They're not doing it. They're doing it for a car. They're doing it for a couple more dollars. They're not doing it for their daughters. They're not doing it for their sons. They're not doing it for their children's children's children. Because if they was, it'd be easy to overcome this. So they don't focus. It's a love game, guys. I'm gonna just be honest with you. Like, it's a love game. Who do you love enough to go to war and make sure you come back? Who do you love enough to be willing to get out of your feelings and get out of your little, oh, it's uncomfortable. Nobody's picking up the phone. Everybody's saying no to me. Who do you love enough to get past that? To me, that's frivolous, because I always love my children enough to make sure it worked and to learn whatever it was that I needed to learn in order to do it. I didn't have anything to go back to. So because a lot of people got some pillows to fall back on, their whole life it consists of attempts and then fallbacks. And if it
That's right.
pivoted,
Now,
it was meant for you.
super powerful. Now, you said something very, very interesting there. You spoke about potential. So you said potential, but you also said a few other things that I do want to sort of touch on, right?
Come on, let's go.
When I think about potential, so let's talk about potential for a while. So what is potential? Potential is possibility, right? Now I think every human being has four sort of pillars, four categories in which their potential exists.
Mhm.
So there's your genetics, right? So you were born certain height, right? Certain structure. So if you're like 4 feet, like you might not be able to go to the NBA, right? So
Yeah.
there's your genetics that limits your potential. There's also what you know. So what you know about the world or about your whatever field that you're in. So if you're in sales, your potential is limited by what you know about sales. So
Mm.
if you know nothing about sales, that's limiting your potential in terms of what you can do in sales. The next pillar is the knowledge of yourself. So how much do you understand and know yourself?
Ooh, self-awareness. That's the critical
Self-awareness.
component.
That's right.
That's the
And
critical
then
component.
it is. And then the last piece is what I really want to focus on and what we've been talking about for the last, I think, 20 minutes, which is the emotion.
Mm.
I was thinking to myself, Shan, in fact, just 2 days ago, I was thinking to myself, we have so many students, right? That are actively engaged in sales. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if I had to train someone, right? Let's say I had to train someone to do sales, how could they compete with somebody who is more experienced? How can they compete with somebody who's been in sales, let's say 5 years? Of course, they might not do more sales than that person, but how do they at least have a shot? And I was thinking to myself, if you don't have a lot of experience, and this is for everybody looking, right? Everybody here is in sales if you're in business. So definitely take notes. So check this out. You haven't been in sales long enough to acquire the knowledge. Like your genetics, you cannot change. But most people have the genetical makeup to be able to pick up the phone,
Oh
right? So
yeah,
everybody's equal. Everybody's equal there on that ground.
I love
Now,
it.
in
Let's
terms
go.
of the knowledge, right? In terms of the knowledge, you may not have enough time. So somebody who's been like yourself for doing this for several decades, like somebody who just coming into this, they may not have the knowledge because you've been in it a lot longer than they have, right?
You're
So what can you really control? You can control the knowledge of self, but you could also control the level of fear,
mm. Emotion.
emotion. So there's two real emotions. In fact, one emotion that I've noticed just from my experience that really plays a large difference, and that is your level of fear. And I was telling someone the other day, fear and passion is the same thing. So fear and passion is not opposite. Passion or fear is a degree. It's a degree, right?
Of the
Fear
same.
is a degree of passion. Fear is a degree of passion, right? So what do you say to that in terms of the emotion?
Wow. Whew, that's a great question. First, I just say, that's a very scientific question, very scientific analogy, very scientific reality, right? And I hope everybody
Right.
really looks into that and sees that for what it is. What I take away from it, and as soon as you started talking about it, it brought something to mind. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson cried before every fight, like physically. So when other people were in the locker room throwing their punches and warming up, he'd be in there with his head in his hands, crying because he was scared. He was scared. He wasn't only scared of what might happen to him, he was also scared about what he was about to do to somebody. He said, I don't like when this person comes out. He said, I'm scared. When I get scared, everybody who go in the ring gets scared because anything can happen. That's why they say protect yourself at all times. I used to box. So he said when he went into the ring, he would be afraid. And the way he got over the fear, or never really got over the fear, but the way he removed the fear was to increase the passion and get
Mm.
rid of the obstacle, turn the obstacle into an opportunity and get over it as fast and as furiously as possible. And this is why in the hood we stopped going to see him. We stopped going to see him because the ticket might be $500, $1,000 to go see Mike Tyson fight, and Mike Tyson fight started being 15 seconds. Like I'm serious. Like the thing about Mike Tyson was, would they make it to the first round? Whoever was put in front of him. That was the question about Mike Tyson. Would they make it to the first round? Mike Tyson was a knockout artist, and his fury, here's his fierceness, is what projected him through the roof at such a young age and cleared out all of his competition in such a short amount of time. When I say competition, I mean the person in front of him. And if you look at when I said that, I thought about myself. When you look at our trajectory as a business and how fast we've been able to, that's because of the same thing. That's because of the same substance. And when you break it down biochemically, it's cortisol, it's endorphins, it's and Lila would probably give it back, dopamine, endorphins, and I just said it. What I just say, Junior? I just said it.
Cortisol.
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 So it's cortisol, endorphins, and dopamine, and the mixture. That's what the fear is. People put a name on it and say, I'm scared. You're not scared. You're experiencing a high level of cortisol and a high level of, you understand? Like that's
Yes.
biochemically what's going on. People give words and they give definitions and they give a Dracula in the closet meaning and definition to a biochemical response. Biochemical responses can be trained. They can be trained. They can be controlled. They can be harnessed, utilized as a tool to make sure it's, think of a child with a floppy, like children don't know what to do when they're born. They have these phalanges, they have these things on their shoulders, and they're like, what is this? They don't know what an
Mhm.
arm is, but they learn through time how to articulate this mass of muscle, bone, sinew, veins, and blood. They learn how to do what they need to do to get through the door. That's the same thing but we're adults. So there's no excuse. And this is why I don't work with anyone for less than a year.
Now, check this out. This leads me to my next point. Now, you also said something there. So you said something like, you know, giving up. A lot of people don't realize that there is something in sales. There's a threshold. Something
Yeah.
like I think some people call it a waterline.
Yep.
You just spoke about a breakthrough, like
Yep.
just being constant, being consistent, having the discipline, and experiencing a breakthrough in sales. There's something called a threshold that you have to cross. And what I realized And this is again all from experience. This is from actually getting on the phone, making calls, etc., etc. Something I realized is that most people don't stay in the game long enough
Nope.
to get outer space, to crack the orbit, to crack the threshold, to get above the waterline where they actually get results. So
They,
somebody might make 9 calls and they think they're doing something wrong. They might make 10 calls, they think they're doing something wrong. They might make 20 calls, they think they're doing something wrong.
yep.
I guarantee you this, it's impossible to make 100 calls and get absolutely zero positive response.
There you go.
The only question is, are you going to have the emotional discipline? And not only emotional discipline, but the are you going to stay in it long enough? The drive, right? Are you going to have the passion? But also, can you maintain your state? So it's about state management. So can you exist in a state of passion long enough
Yep.
to be able to generate the results,
And
right?
that's, Junior, that's why I go back to the who, the identity, because you don't have to psych yourself up. So watch this. I'm in a different state right now. It's 7 o'clock, so I got up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock to be ready for this. Right? I didn't have to psych myself up to do that because my identity is what it is. I am Sean Raiz. I am a speaker, consultant, executive coach. I am a business owner. I am a custodian of community. I don't care what time it is. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning on the moon. Because it was the moon, I'd probably have a spacesuit on. But I'd be up and ready to go. And the truth would not change. That's my identity. My wife is here with me. Why? Because I am a husband. I don't travel by myself. I don't even open those doors. People say, well, it costs. I remember when I first started, people were like, well, it costs double for you to take your wife with you everywhere. I said, no. It doesn't cost double. It would cost me 10 times if I moved by myself and messed this up. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. You don't understand the cost. It's an identity. It's an identity. So what does that mean? That means I have to, and this was before I had any team. This was me having to close enough deals to have enough money to make sure that 1, 2 people get to go in first class, not just me, and stay in the hotel and eat and do this every trip, every business trip, every situation. Because that's not a negotiable. It's not an if or an or. I've never been on a business trip by myself. Nor will you ever. Whenever you see me, just know my wife is in the background somewhere, like Wakanda, waiting and watching. Just know it. It's a non-negotiable. It's an identity. That's the problem. People don't have. If people don't understand, when you take on the this is the problem. People take on a visage. They take on the possibility of being a business owner. They don't take on the identity. They take on the possibility. And that's the problem. We got to close out real quick because I am literally on another podcast at 9 o'clock, your time. But I got 5 minutes.
Right. So, with the last 5 minutes, I do want to ask the people looking. So, what has been your number one takeaway today? So, put it in the chat. I know we've been going back and forth. We haven't even taken any questions this morning, right? But guys, what has been your number one takeaway? Put it in the chat. Phenomenal morning again. If you sort of just coming in, right? Welcome to Breakfast with the Brand. So, guys, for the people who have been there for the whole session, I want you to put it in the chat. What has been your number one takeaway? Right? What has been your number one takeaway? So, Shan, while we wait for these to come in, do you mind speaking a little bit about sort of what we have going on? I know you're pretty you're pretty booked out for the rest of the year, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some places where it's not a secret keynote and you could tell people, like, if you want to see Shan speak live, like, you might be able to come
I'll be in
in there.
Baltimore. I'll be in Baltimore on the 22nd.
Right.
I'll be in. I think I'll be in ATL next month. I'm not sure. Like I said, like my schedule is in somebody else's hand. I have a professional for that. I'm a professional, but my skill set is not watching the calendar. Somebody tells me, so I have an EA. That's the thing that I'm gonna give to you too, right? If there's things that you don't like doing or you're not good at, you have to be able to sell enough to hire someone. to get out the way. You ain't always got to do sales. Like if you're uncomfortable and you don't want to do sales, you don't always have to do sales, but you got to do enough sales to hire someone to do sales for you. Got to be a boss. You got to be a boss. You want to be a boss. You say I'm a business owner. You say I do this for my children or my legacy or whatever the case may be. Just be authentic. Be 100%. Be real. Be genuine. Do what you say and say what you do. Make your words and your actions congruent, and you'll be perfectly fine. What I do want to say is we think in threes. I actually wrote this down when we was going to the break. So we think in threes. So for me, I've got, watch this. I've got speaker, consultant, executive coach. So once I have those identities, the question is, what are the skills that are possessed by each of these identities? First level, we think in threes. Second level, believer, husband, father. I'm a believer, I'm a husband, and I'm a father. What are the attributes of a believer? What are the attributes of a husband for real? What are the attributes of a father? What are those attributes? And then the third one is I am healthy. I am an athlete. I am athletic. And I am young. Those are my identities. I was on a call with a guy, a phenomenal gentleman who works with us, and we meet every year or two. We work remotely through the phone. He does a lot for the brand, but we had a Zoom meeting, and he saw me for the first time in probably like 2 years. And he was like, "Man, how do you do it?" And I'm like, "What?" He says, "You look like Benjamin Button, like you're a swaddling child in your suit." I said, "I don't look like a child." I said, "I appreciate the compliment." But he's like, "You keep looking like you're getting younger and younger and younger." I said, "I am." That's my reality. That's my identity. I'm healthy. I eat right. I wake up early. I drink enough water. I don't feel tired ever. Number two, I'm an athlete. I work out. I lost time. I was on a plane for 5 hours, lost time. First place I went to the gym. I come where I'm going to speak a day or two ahead so I can hit the gym and get right. That's just who I am. That's what I do. It's my identity. What are the habits of the identity? Number three, I am young. I am young. You guys don't have, you don't have these identities. You have the things you think you're supposed to do. Stop thinking about what you're supposed to do and start thinking about who you need to be and what they do. Do that. Let's grow. I got to go. I hope that helps you with your sales. If it doesn't, jump in closing like a leader again, or for the first time, or come into the community. This is where we work on that identity piece. Thank you very much. Let's grow.
All right, let's grow.